There's a tell-all book exposing some of the behind-the-scenes information for the Democratic Party last year. Let this play real quick, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, Democrats are spilling all of Biden's secrets to reporters. It's a lot of fun to read. They're giving us an inside look into Biden's team, what they were doing to cover his decline, and how he made Kamala Harris beg for his endorsement. Now, this new book also claims former President Obama secretly didn't want Kamala Harris to get that job. In fact, he waited 5 days to endorse her.
Really? I didn't know that. Most people should have known that. And I talked about this a lot. I mean, that was pretty much one of the biggest signs early on. We could tell the Obamas did not want to endorse Kamala. But again, it was a whole thing where people pretended not to see what they actually saw.
And here's the book's author, Jonathan Allen, breaking it all down.
President Obama absolutely did not think that Joe Biden should continue, according to our sources, close to President Obama. And he also didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for Democrats. And he worked really behind the scenes for a long time to try to have a mini primary or an open convention, or mini primary leading to an open convention. Did not have faith in her ability to win the election. He was really working against her.
And before we even get into that, now, honestly, during the election, I thought that they should have done a primary. I really think that they rushed to put Kamala in there, and she was not the best choice, as we all see now. Some people still think, hey, she didn't have enough time and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I mean, again, you can pretend like you didn't see what you saw, but you definitely saw it. So Obama and the Obamas were not excited about endorsing her. And everybody knew that. For whatever reason, people just pretended like it didn't happen. And I'm gonna let it play a little bit more. But the thing about it was that the thing that was saddest to me is Obama played himself. Now, Obama is like the best thing for the Democrats since Bill Clinton. He played himself because at the end he decided to try to convince black men that they didn't want to vote for Kamala because she's black and all these different things. And, honestly, for me, I really love the Obamas. I love their presidency. I adored the whole imagery of what they had. Right. So as far as his presidency, I'd say overall he did pretty good. But again, he tarnished his image to me because trying to sell Kamala as this next best thing was just, I didn't think he believed it. I didn't think Michelle Obama believed it.
The things they say that Allen further revealed on a phone call with the vice president on the day Biden passed the baton to Harris, Obama refused to endorse her candidacy as the nominee. That must have been a pretty awkward phone call to realize the kingmaker of the Democratic Party doesn't want you as the nominee.
Look, it's so funny when you see this now come out. Obama knew that she was a terrible vice president and was going to be a terrible candidate. And by the way, he also knew that Joe Biden was incapacitated, and this was their only option at that moment. Barack Obama might be one of the most brilliant political minds I've ever seen in the Democratic Party. He's very astute to what's going on. He understands talent. He understands electability. He's the best since Bill Clinton. And I'm sure he saw what we saw. We were all rooting for it to be Kamala Harris because we thought she was the easiest person to beat. He understood that she was vulnerable. He understood she was not going to be a great candidate. He understood the word salads were a disaster for her. He understood she didn't have an in-depth knowledge of a lot of foreign affairs, and she wasn't going to be good at defending herself. So you combined all that, it's not a good candidate. And I'm sure he's like, guys, we're going to give the White House back to Donald Trump if you guys don't understand how bad she is. So let's have an open convention. And by the way, an open convention is total chaos and anarchy. Yeah. He was so sure that Harris was going to lose that he was willing to say, let's go and just roll the dice at a convention, look out of control and insane, and we might get a better candidate than her.
Now, let me pause it right there. Now, Barack Obama was so smart to think that at the time, and everybody knew about Joe Biden's decline. I think America finally realized it when we saw that first debate. But, again, for me, the saddest thing about the Harris campaign was that for me, Barack Obama lost a lot of his shine. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to say Michelle so much. She just, she caught the stray too. But just speaking on Barack Obama being a past president and someone who was adored on the left and the right. Well, maybe not on the right so much, but he was adored in general as a president. And I think he lost a lot of his shine trying to endorse someone, trying to pretend that he was endorsing this great candidate. Maybe he painted himself into a corner. It is what it is. But I think for a lot of people, I think there's a realization that the Democrats were in bad trouble long before where we are now. Long before the Jasmine Crockett's now, who are out here talking crazy and everybody's crashing out. Cory Booker seemed like he's crashing out too, and AOC and everybody else. All this crashing out that they're doing now, I saw all this before in the election, because honestly, any party who was pretending, who bypassed a primary, who put somebody in who had weaknesses, there's no question that Harris had weaknesses, and rather than playing to her strengths and trying to really fix her weaknesses or tackle her weaknesses dead on, they tried to pretend you didn't see it, right? And of course, let's just focus on Donald Trump. Now the fast forward now to where we at now, with all of what's going on, the Tesla burning, all the cursing, all the discombobulation that's going on in that party. This all started from this point. Well, actually probably further back, but it all started in 2023. At least in 2023, it started there up until the election. And honestly, this was just something for me that, you know, a lot of people I talked to who were staunch Democrats. Now I'm in the middle. I could have voted either way. But again, when they presented Harris, I was like, nah, I don't think she's a strong candidate. I told a lot of people from the very beginning, I'm like, I don't think she's a strong candidate from the very early, from what I saw from her. And a lot of people pretended, oh, well, everybody's getting behind her. The Obamas are behind her. All these celebrities are behind her. And this brings us up to today. So the reason why I do this video is that, look, at some point, we have to acknowledge what happened. And if the Democrats ever want to move back forward, they're going to have to acknowledge what they're talking about in this video. You know, you can't keep pretending, because even though this guy wrote this book, to me, it's not really a tell-all. It was all right in front of our faces. It's just a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it.
I think he was smart to say it. This book, by the way, is not shocking, because everyone else knew it was going to happen too.
I couldn't agree with you more that President Obama is politically astute. Kennedy, when you look at what happened in the aftermath of the election, President Obama was proven exactly right. Take a look at this. New York Times, more than 89% of counties in the United States shifted in the favor of former, now current President Donald J. Trump. And then if you look at Michigan specifically, Politico, Alyssa Slotkin, who ran for Senate there and prevailed, outperformed Harris by more than a full percentage point in all but 28 of the state's 83 counties. Obama knew this would happen and tried to avert a crisis.
Yeah, a couple things. One, he and Donald Trump, both transformational candidates. Joe Biden was not. He never was. That's why, 2020 just must have been an off year because of the pandemic, because in any other time, he never would have been elected. Obama knew that Biden was compromised for a long time. Shame on him for not asserting his power when they could have had a proper primary, because he knew of the decline before that. And he also knew about Kamala Harris. It just shows me that the reason you have the Jasmine Crockett's of the world flexing and saying just bananas things that she is right now is because they don't have a leader in the Democrat Party.
Bingo.
If Barack Obama were that leader, then they would have had an open primary, which would have been better, because it would have been survival of the fittest, and the strongest, most articulate person who could make the case for the party and for voters would have emerged from that convention and would have gotten a much harder look from voters than Kamala Harris did.
In the long run, this is so true. In the long run, I think the Democrats, when they look back at history, not having a primary was, honestly, it was the biggest mistake that party ever made. You know what I'm saying? Look, Kamala Harris is who she is at the end of the day. She didn't get up there and try to run and try to be evil. I think she just had significant shortcomings, right? Whether you want to see it or not, she has significant shortcomings as far as trying to be a president at this time, at this juncture in this country. And not having a primary was a huge mistake, because trying to convince people they don't see what they see, it got worse and worse and worse as we went on. And this tell-all book is interesting because, like I said, I think that, as you see, there's plenty of stuff in there where they say Pelosi urged Biden not to debate. Barack didn't think Joe was in good shape long before we all saw it. He knew it as well, right? So these things, they're not just making it up. You know what I'm saying? And regardless of anything, this is something for people who are still staunch Democrats, who vote Democrat regardless. You got to take in the actual information that you're getting and say to yourself, okay, let me demand more of my party. If you're going to be staunch Democrat and vote for them regardless, you got to demand more, because a lot of people who are in the center decided to vote for Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people right now, here's the biggest thing. I think you have people on the hard left and the hard right, but the biggest thing is I think you have people in the center like me. You have people who do not care about party. And honestly, they're going to vote based on who they think is going to be the best person to move the country forward. I was telling a friend of mine this the other day. Now, if you're angry about the direction the country's going in now, I think what's important is that the other side, Democrats, have to present plans and ideas. Like, if you wouldn't do Doge and you wouldn't dig into government spending that way, then how would you do it? Or would you do it? Do you agree that government spending is a problem? Do you agree the deficit is a problem? Do you agree that immigration is a problem? It's not really enough to go burn Teslas and demonize and say Elon Musk is the worst person in the world and Donald Trump, they're all fascists and they're dictators. That's not going to be enough, because at the end of the day, America as a country has to go in some direction. They got to pick a direction and pick some actionable steps to move forward. And that was essentially what's lacking. Barack Obama, if he had been like the head of the party throughout that situation and they had at least done something different, maybe things would have turned out different. I think Donald Trump would have won anyway based on where we're at now, but I think that it would have been a closer, more competitive campaign, right? Kamala Harris was obviously going to lose. And I said this from the very, very, very beginning, and people just, I don't know. This has been the interesting time for me. That's why, it's interesting to even cover these topics, because people just pretend like they didn't see what they saw.
Interesting, Harris. If we go back to July when we were at the RNC, I remember vividly we were in the show on this hour, and then this article popped in the Washington Post. We were all waiting to hear Obama's thoughts about Biden because he didn't come out and publicly defend him. And then we get this Washington Post headline: Obama tells allies Biden's path to winning re-election has greatly diminished. This man knows how to work the press. He didn't come out and say it. He worked it through the press.
Well, and he waited until all those people had gathered. Like he waited until it's the middle of summer. So, I thought that was fascinating. They know they've got a convention coming up and it's only weeks away. And look what he does, because he thinks, okay, well, maybe we can force an early primary. Remember, there was talk about, well, if she does get in, is there still room to force one, even though because nobody voted on that. Yeah. Right? Voters didn't have a say. It was such an odd few weekends, latter part of July, not to mention what happened with the current president. But I will say this. I honestly thought at the time with Kamala Harris and Barack Obama picked a lane to go after black men and the black vote was one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard. So not only did he, and I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, maybe it was just, one of those things, practically arms akimbo lecturing black voters. I'll never forget that video. He went to stump for her at one point, telling them that the reason that they weren't voting for her is because they didn't love black women enough.
And that's something I talked about, right? So that was a real turning point for me. Like, it really, for me as a black man, it made me look at Barack Obama so differently, because I really couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe that I think he was in Philly at the time, or somewhere in Pennsylvania, and I couldn't believe that he was talking to brothers about them not wanting, they're hesitant to vote for a black woman. It was such a turning point for me of how I looked at him, because I said to myself, wow, like, Barack Obama's not a dummy. I'm like, I know he doesn't believe that. It just seems like a last ditch effort to try to, galvanize some votes for her. And black men still in large numbers voted for Kamala Harris, but just to play that card, I thought was so below Barack Obama and the Barack Obama I knew.
Like, I'm paraphrasing him, but that was the lecture that black men got. And I just thought that was so strange. And what it did was it exploited the weakness that she already had in that lane. It's almost like he helped her lose, at least with that group.
And Emily, if you think about the 5 days it took him to endorse Kamala, it was reported in the New York Times. And again, this is the savviness of Obama with the press. People close to Obama who have positioned himself as an impartial elder statesman about intra-party machinations said not to read much into the non-endorsement. Well, the non-endorsement, as it turns out, per Jonathan Allen, was because he didn't believe in her. We should have read into it.
Of course, because what you don't say is just as important as what you do say, which is why, to your point, none of this is surprising in a way. It just sort of reveals the aha, like I knew it, right? And it's interesting because I thought the same thing. I wonder if there's some amusement at essentially for the sacrifice of the Democrat Party if Obama's like, yeah, I told you. I told you that Kamala Harris wasn't a good candidate. I told you that Joe Biden was always a facsimile of my policies without the charisma and the true origin, transformative power and nature and inherent character. And I told you all. But the question is, what does he do from here?
Exactly.
Is he going to remain in the backdrop, or will he, either behind the scenes or in front of it, be very firm, very direct, and help lead this party back to at least some semblance of a cohesive unit? Yeah. He might just prefer to stay golfing.
Maybe not a podcast like his wife.
Yeah.
Barack Obama and Michelle, the Obamas, could have rode off into the sunset and had this Kennedy-like aura around them forever. They're like the Kennedys, the second version of the Kennedys, right? You know, even more Kennedy-like than a Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, because they had a whole different type of relationship. And we can't forget, no matter how much you love Bill Clinton, he had the whole affair in the White House and all that. So that tarnished that marital image, right? But the Obamas, they were in a different place, and I wish he would have rode off into the sunset. I think that this last campaign totally tarnished that sparkly image, in my opinion, right? And now I don't think Barack Obama can come back and be like the head of the party. I think he lost a lot of credibility with voters in the center. And I think that you got to have definitely not Jasmine Crockett. Please, no more Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett needs to sit down, chill, go somewhere, come up with some ideas, work on legislation. So I'm not going to talk about her too much, but she doesn't need to be the head of the party. She will cause y'all to lose for decades to come. Here's a book from somebody who actually gave you some inside information as to what's happening. You can pretend it's all lies, you can pretend it's all made up, but at the end of the day, it's like all these things were, to me, all these things were very evident. I could see them with my own two eyes. So I was like, nah, I can't vote for her. I'm not with the Democratic Party. And honestly, where they've went since the election makes me really be like, yo, y'all are crazy. Y'all are obviously lost it. You know what I'm saying? Because they weren't doing all this craziness before the election. After Donald Trump won, this derangement syndrome has gotten even crazier. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Crucial Convo.